Hello everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and today we're taking a look at the all-new for 2014 third generation Mazda 6. This has been completely redesigned for this model year and now features Mazda's new Sky Active technologies. The Mazda 6 used to be almost a half step smaller than its competition, but for 2014 Mazda has gone back to the drawing board and they've resized the Mazda 6 to be in the thick of the competition. We have length, width, and wheelbase numbers that are pretty much right in the middle of all the competitors in this segment. We have a very low roof height compared to some of the competition in this segment, most notably that Honda Accord. 2014 brings an all-new nose for the Mazda 6, and it's not based on the 3 Series somewhat awkward smiley face lower grille. Instead, we have this very aggressive large Mazda grille right here with this very large Mazda logo, and hiding right behind this is a radar cruise control element that's optional on certain Mazda 6 models. We have this very large lower spoiler that helps with fuel efficiency. We have optional HID headlamps. They're standard in our iGrand touring model with these very aggressive LED daytime running lamps. This front end is probably the second best looking in this segment in my opinion. I think that the Ford Fusion's Aston Martin-esque nose is still a little bit more attractive than the Mazda 6, but this is definitely more attractive than the somewhat sedate Honda Accord and definitely the very boring Toyota Camry. The backs of cars seem to be difficult to style, and that's really obvious with the Ford Fusion, which has a very dramatic front but kind of a boring rear end. The Mazda 6 has a much more attractive backside than that Ford. Our iGrand touring model has this tiny little lip spoiler here on the trunk lid, and of course we get these dual chrome exhaust tips as well. You'll see this little Sky Active badge on the back of most new Mazdas these days. Sky Active is Mazda's new fuel efficiency technology package. It's not just engines and transmissions, it's also weight savings in the chassis because the new Mazda 6 weighs just over 3,200 pounds this year, which makes it among the lightest in its class. The other part of Sky Active you'll find right here under the hood because this is an all-new 2.5-liter direct injection 4-cylinder engine. It produces 184 horsepower and 185 pound-feet of torque. When you mate that with the standard 6-speed manual transmission, you get 25 miles per gallon in the city and 37 on the highway. And if you get the 6-speed automatic transmission, which is standard in our iGrand touring model here, it bumps it up to 26 in the city and 38 on the highway. Making those fuel economy numbers even more surprising is the fact that all Mazda 6 models in the US wear 225 with rubber. That's a decent amount wider than the Japanese competition. And when you take a look at the Ford Fusion, it's about the same width as the standard Ford Fusion rubber, but this car is considerably lighter. That means that the Mazda 6 handles better out on the road thanks to these wide tires and that light curb weight. Front seat comfort in the Mazda 6 is very good for this segment. That is something that we've come to expect from Mazda being a very driver-focused vehicle. We have a tilt telescoping steering wheel with a decent range of motion, but it doesn't telescope out quite as much as some of the competition. Now, the seat bottoms and seat back cushions have become thinner this year to help save weight and therefore improve fuel economy in the 2014 6, but they are a little bit more comfortable than they were last year. You should always spend a decent amount of time in a driver's seat before you buy a car, and the Mazda 6 is a good example of why. Even though these seats are very comfortable and I find this driving position to be very good for me, you might not like sitting so low to the ground because the Mazda 6 does have a much more reclined and much lower seating position than you'd find in something like a Camry or an Accord. Mazda has taken the interior of the 6 up a notch for 2014. The interior features this single-piece injection molded dashboard. It is a soft-touch unit, and a single-piece unit is important because that means your interior is going to be quieter and squeak-free in the long term. Instead of fake wood trim, we have this unique burgundy plastic strip running across the car. I think I would prefer aluminum, but it is an interesting touch thinking outside that fake wood. We have dual-zone standard climate control in the iGrand touring model and a very BMW configuration where the controls are low in the dashboard and the radio is high in the dashboard. Do like that because it helps keep your eyes on the road. Plastics do get a little bit harder as we go lower in the dash, but that's expected in this price class. Pretty much everything that's easily touchable by the driver or the passenger is a soft touch piece of plastic, including the armrests on the side and in the center. Going down the middle of the dashboard, we have our center channel speaker right here, just above the 5.3-inch touchscreen infotainment system. We'll go over that a little bit later. Further down on the dashboard, we have standard dual-zone climate control in our iGrand touring model. This is the 6-speed automatic transmission shifter. The manual transmission is available in the base and the mid-grade Mazda 6, but not in the top-end iGrand touring model. That is very unique in this segment because most of the competition just doesn't offer a manual transmission at all. Going here to the center, we have a very BMW iDrive Audi MMI-like control, direct access buttons to audio, nav, phone setup, and this control unit toggles side to side. It rotates and it clicks down to enter. We have back buttons on this side and on that side, making it easier for your passenger to operate. Beyond that, we have two large cup holders. These easily accommodate the largest drink that you can find in a drive-thru, and the center armrest slides forward and backward to give you a little bit more comfort when you're driving. The 6 has an all-new steering wheel for 2014. Over here on the right side of the wheel, you'll find some buttons that you don't find in many other cars, and this is a radar cruise control button. It is about a $900 option on the iGrand Touring model, and it bundles with it forward collision warning. Let's take a look at the gauge cluster. It is a 2-dial gauge cluster set in 3 different pods. So over here we get the tachometer, we get the speedometer in the middle with the trip information right here, and then over on this side we get a multi-information display with things like distance to empty, our trip computer, average fuel economy, current miles per gallon, etc. A common complaint about Mazda 6 models in the past has been rear seat legroom because they were a little bit smaller than the competition. For 2014, the 6 has grown considerably. So you can see I'm 6 feet tall and I have about 4 or 5 inches of legroom left if I sit right behind this front seat that's adjusted for me. It's also gotten a little bit wider, so this middle seat has a decent amount more legroom and headroom than it did before. Now my hair is still touching the ceiling, but at least I don't have to cock my head to a silly angle in order to get back here. Now, this front passenger seat was adjusted for a 6'5" passenger we had in the car, so you can see I still have a few inches of legroom left as well. The Mazda 6 may have become more comfortable and larger on the inside, but out here in the trunk, we've actually dropped from 7 out of 10 points in our exclusive Trunk Comfort Index to 6 out of 10 points for this 2014 model year. That's because at 14.8 cubic feet, this trunk has shrunk over last year, and it's now among the smallest in its direct competition. We do have a handle to help close the trunk lid, but it seems to be angled to help close it on the inside of the trunk rather than on the outside. For 2014, Mazda has brought an all-new 5.8-inch touchscreen infotainment system to the 6. Now this is not standard, but it is available on most models of the 6. In fact, most models of the 6 that we were able to find on local dealer lots all had this system. Navigation is an option, but it is standard on the iGrand Touring trim that we are in right now. We have direct access buttons on the side for audio, phone, navigation, the setup screen over here, and this is a single slot CD player. In addition to controlling the system via this touch screen here, we also have that joystick multi-directional controller right down here in the center console. We have phone button over here, setup, navigation, and audio on this side, back buttons on the left and the right, so it's easier for the driver or the passenger to use the system. It is a multi-way joystick, just like iDrive, down to select, up, down, and then of course you can rotate the knob as well for different options on the screen. So if you rotate this option, you can see that over here on the screen it's moving this little cursor up and down. If we shift it up, you can see that now it's selecting the options on those little tabs up top. You can click across to more. We do have Pandora as well as Bluetooth integration. Pandora does not require a separate Mazda connected app or anything like that on your phone. You just have to have the Pandora app on your phone. It is a nice feature. Unlike something like BMW iDrive, where you have to have the BMW connected app in order to use Pandora, you don't need that in this system. The USB connection is in the center console of this car, and it does provide enough power to charge most USB devices, but most notably things like iPads and other high-draw tablets like high-draw Android tablets or the larger screen Android tablets won't be able to charge with this system. It just doesn't provide enough power. We have noticed a few flaws with this system, and I'm going to plug in a USB device right now. It happens to be an iPhone 5, and then we'll see how long it takes the system to recognize this iPod. We found something very similar when using a USB device with MP3 files on it, as long as they had the same number of files on them. And we're just going to fast forward past this, hopefully with some sort of time ticker down there so you can see how long it took. Finally, now after a considerable amount of time, the car has finally read the music library on my iPhone or iPod. You can see I only have 3,700 songs right now on this device, and it took that long. The bad part is that the Mazda 6 takes this long every single time you try and start the car. So even if you leave your iPod or your USB device or your iPod plugged into the car, turn the car off, start it back up again, it takes that long for the car to read the library and start playing. This is one of the slowest systems I have ever seen, definitely the slowest on the market for that. If we hit over here to the Ipod menu, we do have full access to the playlists, artists, songs, albums, genre, etc. Not terribly speedy on accessing the playlists, and oftentimes this system doesn't find all the playlists on the device. So for instance, that's happening right now. So if you see We have maybe, what's that, 5 playlists there and 2 playlists on that screen. But if I go over to my device itself and I look at my music library on it, you can put that on the screen here, and we go to playlists, you can see that there are a great deal more playlists here than there are showing on this screen. That is something that we discovered many times with the system. Occasionally it will pull all the playlists off your device, occasionally it won't. It's really difficult for us to tell exactly what was going on there. We do have full voice command access, however, to the system like you would have in Ford Sync or Toyota's Entune system. Playlists, albums, artists, genres, etc. You can voice command all of those. It is a little bit slower when doing that than any of those competitive systems as well. Definitely a flaw in this system. Bluetooth integration worked, however, very well when pairing with your audio device. That was my preferred choice for integrating my particular music device with this car while I was driving it. As far as navigating the system, having this joystick device in the center console is kind of an interesting touch. If you see on some of these screens, like on this one particularly, you can see that there are fingerprints right here on the screen. The screen is also more likely to get scratched if your hands are typically dry and rough like mine tend to be. So it is kind of a good alternative to offer that joystick so that you don't scratch up your screen and don't get fingerprints everywhere. You can access absolutely everything in the system using this joystick as well as the touchscreen. It's really just your choice which one you want to use. My final take on this system is that compared to the competition, this product just isn't fully baked yet. So if we take a look at the setup screen, it's just as obvious as that iPod screen what's going on. Especially if we take a look at these options like the lighting option. Which of these options is selected? Well, the answer right now is 30 minutes. You can see that by hitting that button because nothing happens. But 60 minutes looks awfully selected to me. There's no checkbox in this little round box or little round area here like you'd think that it would have to tell you that that option is selected. That little highlighted area is just telling you what would be selected by this rotary joystick in the center console if you were to select it. And so that is a little bit confusing, especially when it's a combined touchscreen and joystick system. It's just not quite well thought out, even like my Ford Touch is. My Ford Touch is slow and it's crashy and it has all those sorts of problems, but it does seem to be very user intuitive. It doesn't have these same sort of half-baked problems that we have going on in this system. Out on the road, the Mazda 6 reminds me of a hot hatch, something along the lines of Mazda's own 3 or even a Volkswagen GTI. It just has that same sort of feel around it. The steering is a little bit stiffer than you'd find in your average mass-market mid-size sedan. It's an awful lot more direct, a lot more engaging as well. The Mazda 6 also handles very well, and it feels very confident while doing it. It's definitely still a front-wheel drive car, but this is probably one of the best tuned mid-sized front-wheel drive car chassis that I've ever driven. It has a very solid, very connected to the road feeling. Now, of course, we do have electric power steering, so the steering feel is a little bit numb, but in comparison to everything else out on the market, this is among the best. Performance-wise, we clocked 7.4 seconds to 60, which is a respectable time for a 4-cylinder mid-sized sedan. It's right in there with the hot hatch segment as well, which helps add to that hot hatch-like feeling behind the wheel. There is a price to be paid for the 6's handling ability, and that's in the ride department. This is not as smooth or as soft as something like a Toyota Camry, so it's not going to feel as isolated. It's not going to give you that sort of pillow riding on a cloud-like feel out on the road that you'd get in something like a Camry, but it is an awful lot more engaging, and that's a trade-off I am willing to take. Compared to the other entries in the segment, I find the Mazda 6 the most engaging. The Kia Optima comes in a close second, tied with that new Ford Fusion. The problem with the Fusion is that it's a little bit heavier than this Mazda 6. It's about 300 pounds heavier, and that is noticeable out on the road. It does have an effect on the absolute handling ability of that Fusion. Where the 6 really excels is the fuel economy for the fun ratio, because we've been averaging 30.5 miles per gallon in very mixed driving, plenty of highway, city, and of course plenty of mountain driving like we're on right now, and we've still been averaging 30.1 miles per gallon, which is notably better than the Fusion or the Optima. In fact, this is almost as good as the Optima Hybrid and just about as good as the Toyota Camry Hybrid when driving on similar roads in a similar style. This is one of the best performing vehicles in this segment. It's also one of the most efficient. Of course, that Nissan with its CVT and the new Honda Accord with its CVT do a little bit better than this out on the road, but they're not quite as engaging to drive. Mazda has made significant improvements to the cabin isolation for this generation of 6. However, it is still a little bit louder than some of the competition out on the road. Most notably, road noise is definitely higher in the 6 than it is in something like a Toyota Camry or a Honda Accord, and you can thank the wider standard rubber for that. If you stick wider tires on a car, you're just going to get more road noise. Wind noise is very well controlled in this generation of 6, notably lower than last year and right in line with the rest of the competition. Engine noise, however, is somewhat less isolated than I was expecting, especially if you floor the car. Under full throttle acceleration, you hear an awful lot more engine noise from under the hood than you would in something like a Ford Fusion or even a Hyundai Sonata or Kia Optima. Overall, the Mazda 6 is the most engaging car in its segment to drive, but that segment is important to keep in mind because the Mazda 6 is only available at this moment with this 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine. The competition, for the most part, is available with either a turbocharged 4-cylinder or a V6 option, which produces a great deal more power. The Mazda 6 still handles just about as well as those V6 options, but it's not going to be as fast on the road. So if you prefer the faster ride to the more engaging and better handling ride, but one that's a little bit slower, then you need to keep that in mind when you're taking a look at the 6 versus its competition. Mazda has priced the 2014 6 very aggressively. At $20,880, the 6 is decently cheaper than the main competitors in this segment. Our model here, which is a fully loaded 6, topped out at $31,490, which is still not terribly expensive when you compare it to the Ford Fusion, which can option up to $40,000 fairly easily. Mazda tells us that they do plan on bringing the diesel Skyactiv engine to the American market Mazda 6 soon. They haven't said exactly when or how much that's going to cost, but it will make the Mazda 6 an interesting alternative to something like the Volkswagen Passat TDI, which is really the only mid-size sedan in the American market that has a diesel engine option. It should also bring those fuel economy numbers up from the Mazda 6's already very high fuel economy numbers to something perhaps class-leading, if not class-tying, with that Passat TDI. The 2014 6 has definitely taken Mazda's game up a notch. They're finally able to compete head-to-head with certain variations of the competitors' sedans. We do need to keep that certain variations in mind, however, because there's no V6 engine option under the hood of the Mazda 6. At the moment, there's no diesel engine. We're told that it will come soon. There's no turbocharged 4-cylinder like you'd find in the Ford or certain other entries in the segment like the Hyundai and Kia models as well. It is a very attractive sedan, but its technology inside is a little bit lacking when you compare it to some of the competition. The road manners of the Mazda 6 are absolutely impeccable, so which sedan is right for you really depends on how much you value overall speed, because that wouldn't really be the Mazda 6, or handling performance. The Mazda 6 does feel better out on the road than the competition, but it's not going to be quite as fast. With that technology, it's also a teeny bit behind on the electronic and gadgets area, but it is a very stylish and very attractive sedan. That base $20,880 price is also very attractive, so that's something to keep in mind. Again, I'm Alex Dykes. That's been our quick look at the 2014 Mazda 6. This model has been the iGrand Touring edition of the 6, which is the top-level trim. To be sure and comment on this video in the comment section down below, click on that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen. Go ahead and ask me any questions you have about this car down there in that comment section. You can always send me messages here on YouTube. Just click on over to our main YouTube screen and you can throw things down there in the comment section. Ask us any questions you like about general automotive questions, new car buying advice, etc. Be sure and comment and tell us what you liked, what you didn't like about the review, and what you'd like us to review next time.